Yes. All right. Go ahead, call the meeting to order. And first item up is electronic participation. 2.2-3708.1 of the Code of Virginia, 1950 as amended, permits members of the Board of Supervisors to participate in a meeting of the board through electronic communications means from a remote location in certain situations. Supervisor DeMotts has requested to participate remotely in the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled for Monday, September 13th, 2021 at 6:15 p.m. to be physically held in the Government Center in Christiansburg. The reason for the request is for a personal matter. Members physically present can vote to agree to allow participation by other board members requesting to participate remotely. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
6 ayes.
All right, next up item is closed meeting. Be it resolved, the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby enters into closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following. Section 2.2-3711, paragraph 5, discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. Number 1, project 2021-02. Number 2, project number 2021-08. And number 3, project number 2021-10. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. 1, the Planning Commission. 2, personnel. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Did you get a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. DeMotts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we're in closed meeting. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, if you call the roll.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Ms. Biggs.
Aye.
Mr. Motts.
Aye.
Ms. Bowden.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Ms. Levens. Aye. Chairman Chakowski.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Ms. Biggs.
Aye.
Ms. Motts.
Aye.
Ms. Bowden.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Ms. Levens. Aye. Mr. King.
Aye.
Chairman Chakowski.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item up is our invocation and pledge. County Administrator will lead us.
We could rise for a moment of silence and then I'll lead us in the pledge of allegiance. Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Next item up is presentations, recognitions, and awards. And I believe VDOT is up first. Thank you, Mr. Black.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Just a few minor updates on some ongoing projects, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the maintenance things. Yellow Sulphur Road construction project continues on schedule, and they are, even though they have a completion date by contract in the spring, they're really going to try to push to get that finished this year, which is good news. Not such good news is another project, Seneca Hollow, which Supervisor Christiansburg had asked me about. That's well behind schedule. That's the reason we have Seneca Hollow Road closed. It's around 636 near Route 11 in the Roanoke County line. Well behind schedule. They are making a little bit more progress now, though. In the last 90 days, they have completed abutment 1 for the final concrete on Pier 2 tomorrow, and then they still got issues on Pier 1. They've been having cofferdam projects. Generally, a bridge project, getting up out of the water is the toughest part. Once you get up out of the water, you can work a little bit better. But they are severely behind schedule. They are, as per contract, being penalized for that. We've retained their earnings 5%. That's been going on since August of last year. They also have a disincentive penalty as part of the contract. They get usually there's an incentive, disincentive. This is unfortunately a disincentive, as well as a liquidated damages, which are running about $600 a day on them. Just have not put the resource to that. I don't know the history of the company or where they have other projects, but their crews and materials have not been put on this project. But with the project that they have had in the last 90, they're still hoping to get Pier 1 done up out of the water and now hoping for completion of the project by the end of this calendar year. So that one's unfortunate. Yellow Sulphur, we're still crossing our fingers that they actually get done the hard surface on that this year. So our other big kind of work is the plant mix schedule, and that's about done through the county. I don't know if they're quite done with Boy Road, but they're pretty close, I think. They've got a section of Pilot Road, South Franklin. It's from the town line. It's around 615, comes out of town, Christiansburg, and goes towards Pilot. And they're moving the section from the town line to Smith Creek Road, all the way to Smith Creek Road. Those are upcoming, and that should finish off the planning schedule. We had a few storms. The big one that did hit, we heard all the warnings about tornadoes touching down and everything. It didn't hurt any of the roads. I know it did some private property damage, but we escaped pretty well road wise for that. I think Blacksburg area headquarters said they had about 3 trees down that night. There are 3 trees that affected the road. I know there's a lot more. Some of those other spots. But there were, just even various little storms. Get some of these heavy thunderstorms. There's some work to do in picking up debris. We do work with state police and town police and others out in Virginia Tech football games, not as much as we used to, but so we have been working on those with traffic on those, and then working on just kind of normal maintenance items of grading gravel roads. We did cut a little bit of brush. Got some on Daisy on Blue Camp. I have the Ford line at Hickman Hollow Road. Got a lot more of those to catch up on. So that brush, I know. I did some pipe clean out on Merrimack Road, Pilot Road, and had to work on Buckskin, Cedar Run. That's very steep gravel road. It gets a lot of washouts, so I had to do some work on that. Other than that, that's about our schedule for the last month, and I'll take any other questions.
Okay, we'll go around the room. Supervisor Blevins, do you have anything?
Just again, speed study on Route 114.
The traffic engineer's got that and some of the stuff that Supervisor Bone questions on. He's been working on. He's been sick and he's been out. And, he owes us updates on those. They're all working. I think we'll do a phone call for some of the speed limit type questions that we've had. But he does have that scheduled.
And also the traffic light cycle right there. I think we mentioned it before. Pepper's Ferry right there at Outback. That cycle, is that town or is that considered still?
Which one? The one that right there at Outback. Well, that's all. Those are VDOT signals. We've been getting. They did some work on them. We've been getting sporadic complaints on several of those. They're looking at all the signals there, as well as we've had a request. Got a couple of things. We have a request to look at a crosswalk across South Franklin there, like right at one at Aldi. There's a cross right there. I don't know what we're going to do about that request. It'd be nice to have all of that very pedestrian friendly. If you have a pedestrian phase, though, you got to get the time from somewhere. They're going to have to study and see whether that's just going to back up traffic too much. Is that I thought we might get that low shoulder pothole at 114 and prices for today. I wrote by just now they didn't get it. I think they'll get it tomorrow, at least this week. That might something we looked at. But,
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Supervisor King?
I have none. Thank you, sir.
Supervisor Shepherd?
McCoy Road does look good, what they paved. It looks like they're about half done. I don't know exactly how far they're going.
it's a long way, so I don't know.
Uh,
Probably wherever they did most of that patching, they'll be going over an overlay.
They haven't started down Snyder Hill yet. They're right at the top of it. So,
They may have more to do than I thought.
when's our large brush cutting crew coming back?
We don't get a lot of that. We're gonna.
We need them, I swear. Long Shot Road is just terrible. Like around that hairpin turn,
I'll make sure we get
bottom of the hill, especially. And I've had a lot of complaints about Keystone Branch Road too. The whole thing, that's probably the 2 worst.
All right.
I have had some complaints on Nars Run too. But only so much with a small crew, but. That's all.
Supervisor Bone?
So 2 weeks ago or whenever we had those big storms and there were only a couple of trees. So there was branch down on my road, right in front of my house, and the school bus went through over the branch and picked up the kids on the road and stuff like that. Do the school bus drivers tell you, because they're so early, they probably see a lot of stuff before the neighbors see them and stuff like that. Do they communicate with you guys?
Not the, if they report it to the transportation director, we are in good communication with the transportation director of the schools, especially in winter. But that would hold at any time. So if we have a situation where there are a lot of trees down on school bus routes, it's our guys can't get out and ride all those routes. But if there's an early schedule, and we're out anyway, probably those days or nights or whatever, get brushed. It'd be just as easy to get the bus routes as well. So that may be something that we should probably go ahead and call him instead, waiting around for him to call us and see. Make the request. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it was a small tree, so they went over it, made a whole bunch of noise, but it was a small enough tree that I could even push it out of the way, but it was covering the whole road, so. But anyway, it's all good. Dry Run Road, one of the residents is saying that the culverts still get full up, and it needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I don't know, would we ever get a plan for that road? Or, I think you guys spend a lot of money out on that road.
We do. It's a steep road in areas and a gravel road. It's hard to keep gravel on it. I've been here long enough to remember when it was all, there weren't any pipes on there at all. It was all open fords, like 7 open fords on there. We put those in, but fords on there, piped areas that used to be open fords have their own issues too, obviously, because you put something that's restricted there, you can get clogged up. So it's a balancing act, I guess, of trying to balance whether just to keep the whole thing open or be able to pass without having to drive through water every single time.
So 40 years from now, let's say it got on the 6-year plan or whatever, could it be paved and have culverts that eventually weren't clogged?
It could be paved. I don't know how we would do the drainage on that road because the road level would still be so low. There's no way, even an arch pipe, which is kind of a squished kind of pipe. I don't know how we would, or even if you put them in series, 3 or 4 or 5 of them at each of those crossings. I don't know that you could. Some of them aren't quite so shallow. There's some that have a decent, but you need a certain amount of cover on the road. It would be paving that, hard surfacing that, and bringing it up to a grade that would allow a pipe enough to carry all the water that goes through would be difficult. The other option is rerouting the stream, so it doesn't cross so many times. You just put it right on down, but that comes obviously with its own cost and environmental issues, and we can be allowed to do that or not.
Well, I think the stream's already completely wrecked anyway, because there's so much gravel in it. It's, not even a real stream, not even a live stream anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, so maybe that might be I don't know. How do we go about trying to figure out maybe that is the right solution? And maybe it could become live in 40 years kind of thing, once all that darn gravel is taken out of it, because that's all that's in it now.
That would require a lot of preliminary engineering work, and unfortunately some of our gravel road projects just aren't set up for having that much work, pre-engineering done.
And then the last thing is, I'm happy that Betty and Doug are here to talk to us about something different, but I'm waiting for all the information that you're gonna send us so that they're straight away on Luster's Gate. We're gonna have hopefully a speed study or something, because it's a drag strip. There's the drag strip by the cheese factory, but then there's a drag strip right below Woodland Hills at the Hahn Farm. But I'm not requesting the speed study until I get the information so that we can make sure that, we have the most success when the speed study actually occurs. Thank you.
Supervisor Demott.
Have any questions? Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
Not a road question. It's about I-81. I just was interested in, are we experiencing more accidents than last year? I know last year was COVID. It just seems like there's constantly accidents on 81 that's backing up things in the New River Valley. Do you know anything about that? And what is exactly causing the accidents?
I don't know, we haven't, it's not been a topic that's come up, so I don't know if there's anything
Well,
specifically higher now.
My concern, and I've expressed this to the board many times, and I have a friend on the Board of Supervisors in Rockingham County who had the same concern. We're constantly calling out our first responders to react to these accidents, and that leaves them not in, their home area. And so and we have volunteers, and so I'm constantly worried about that. My own experience, I think that there's nothing about keeping any kind of car link between cars at all. So if you try to do that, someone's going to cut in front of you. But
Yes.
I don't know if anything else can be done. I just think it's a terribly dangerous situation, especially at certain times. And it worries me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the plan to widen it's decades long.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I don't know if there'll ever be a meeting, David, that won't have a full sheet of things to follow up on, but this is a pothole I think I had mentioned to you at the last meeting. And I noticed that somebody had stuck a grade stake in it and put a piece of tape on it, but I don't think it was VDOT. I think it was a citizen trying to make people aware that this hole is right there on the white line. And I haven't looked at it since we had all that rain. Because I think that's how it got created in the first place is drainage. And so it may be even worse and maybe undermining the road now. I'm not sure, but that's at the intersection of Sisson Hall Road and Allegheny.
Yep. I've been out there and looked at this. Both, yeah.
Oh, you have seen it?
I've seen it. I had a picture on my phone right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sent it in and, I guess they'll get to it.
Well,
This month.
and they may be waiting to
For the whole
correct the whole
drainage, yeah.
drainage issue, so I don't know. But at any rate, I had two other requests, and this actually has to do with Old Town Road in Shawsville. Near the eastern intersection with 460. I guess apparently there's a lot of vegetation that's growing over into the road. I think, matter of fact, we talked about doing that to alleviate a complaint about getting a camper out a year ago, but the way things grow, could be grown back. But and also had a request from a citizen to trim a lot of overhead. I guess it's kudzu that grows across the road on the lines and it's hanging down. And that's right there, right between Stevenson Road and Allegheny Springs Road, but it's on Old Town. It's between those two roads. And that's the only thing I have. Did that fill up the whole page?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming and appreciate your patience with us.
It's always good to have stuff to do, though.
Yeah, well, I don't think you'll ever run out of things to do. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right, next item up under presentations is our broadband VATI project.
Here, going to recognize Brian. Brian's going to lead us through our presentation tonight. Also want to recognize two other folks that are with us. Michael Clemens, president of GigaBeam, is here tonight. And Amanda Cox with AEP is here with us as well. Amanda, thank you for being here tonight. AEP and GigaBeam are two partners that we're working very closely with on this project. And Brian's going to tell you more about it.
Appreciate everyone's time. We're going to start kind of with a status update. So in 2018, Montgomery County partnered with Blue Ridge Advisory Group, Thompson and Litton to do this study, to do a broadband study and provide potential solutions to underserved and unserved broadband residents of Montgomery County. In fall of 2020, the county purchased and installed 20 wireless on wheels carts and identified and placed those. Several of them have been moved and can be moved again. In early 2021, the county received its first Virginia telecommunications agreement. So the 2021 grant was originally a wireless grant. However, working with our partners at ABCO, that we changed this to a fiber grant and resubmitted the application. So it's construction of fiber passings to 1,292 homes in the Elliston, Shawsville, Lafayette, and Allegheny Springs area. Of course, county's worked with Gigabeam to design this project, and following approval of final documentation by ADDENDUM, we can begin construction. And then the anticipated construction date is December 31, 2022.
Right, if I could just add, when we talk about, and you'll hear the phrase passing several times tonight, that means we have, the fiber is going by so many residences and properties. That doesn't mean that all of those folks will sign up for service, but there will be the availability to provide that service. So this grant that we have in Eastern Montgomery County is going to allow up to 1,292 opportunities for service.
And it's home, businesses, church, everything's called a passing. So of the 2021 ADDENDUM grant, ADDENDUM provided $919,569. Montgomery County provided a 10% contribution for $140,763. Gigabeam provided a cash contribution of $140,763. And then Gigabeam also provided a labor use, design, and fiber connection for $206,540 for a total of $1,407,000. So that's the 2021 grant. Right now, we're waiting on Department of Housing and Community Development to approve the contract, and then we can move forward. They have a 3-page contract form you have to give to them, so all that's now in their hands. So let's talk about ADDENDUM 2022. The Virginia Telecommunications Initiative is a very competitive grant. The governor added $700 million to this grant this year, and with the assistance of ABCO, the counties of Bland, Pulaski, and Montgomery are applying as one region with universal coverage, which this is very favorable to the DHCD VATI folks. AEP is spending $56.7 million in Bland, Pulaski, and Montgomery on a regional fiber construction. Of course, it's one of the largest VATI applications, and it's utilizing the utility leverage program. And of course, we'll be partnering with Gigabeam to provide the last mile of service. So basically, ABCO will be providing the middle mile, and we will Gigabeam will be providing the last mile. So the VATI grant deadline is tomorrow.
Which is why several of us were emailing each other all weekend.
Yes, yes. I think poor Amanda worked almost the whole weekend. So we have 11,611 passings projected to provide service to household and businesses in the unincorporated areas in Montgomery County. So neither of the two towns will be included in this because they already have above 25 megabits a second down and 3 megabits a second up service through Comcast or Shintel. So the towns are considered served as far as the Department of Housing and Community Development. And then the county is where we have the unserved and underserved. So this requires installation of 100 miles of new AEP fiber, utilizing 60 miles of existing fiber and over 300 miles of new fiber installed by Gigabeam. And while this is not the best map, it does give you a feeling for what 11,611 new passings look like. Each one of those little dots is a home. So that's a lot of new installation.
And it goes to say that as far as the overall project, this is as close to getting truly universal service for the county that we can achieve. We know that there may still be an odd place here and there that we have to try to come up with some hybrid way to serve, but this will get nearly everybody.
So the batting 2022 grant. So the total project cost for Montgomery County is $54 million. And we are asking that Montgomery County provide a match from the American Rescue Plan as a $7 million as a max. It could be less than that, but right now, all of the prices are being brought together. And then when you actually bid the prices out, there could be some differential. So 7 million is the maximum number.
This is what we're reviewing with you this evening. We're not asking you to make an appropriation of funds. We're just making you aware that based on the 19.3 million that the county's going to receive in American Rescue Plan funds, we'd like for the board to allow us to say that up to 7 million can be used for this universal broadband project. Tonight, all we need is a consensus. We'll come back to you as the project moves forward for a more formal appropriation.
All right, so Gigabeam's rates, 100 megabits a second up and down is $59. 250 by 250 is $79. 500 megabits by 500 megabits is $99. And the 1 gig down, 1 gig up is $129 a month. I'm paying more than that, $129 for 300 gigabytes a month current.
I am out in the county with a 25/3 wireless service that is $99 a month. So these rates are very competitive and will be very attractive to most of our citizens.
So Montgomery County has received several grant letters of support. Senator Mark Warner sent us one, Congressman Morgan Griffith, delegates Chris Hurst, Nick Rush, and Joe McNamara, thank you, and Virginia Tech Administration. Pending approval of the funding, Montgomery County's $7 million match for pending consensus here tonight. We will submit the application. The New River Valley Regional Commission is pulling the application together for all Land, Pulaski, Montgomery, all 3 regions, and the grant award is anticipated. The grant award may occur before the governor's election. However, we're not sure. Last year it was March of 2021. And so, but the anticipated date of completion is December 31, 2023. This is a lot of new fiber to run, a lot of new homes to connect, but it's a very good project. Do you have any questions for me or Amanda or Mike?
Run Romer, do you not have any questions? Or go
Do
ahead.
you have any estimate how many households that would be? I know we got all these little dots, but
It's
11 overlap, but that's what you said, 11,000, is that correct?
Really 12,000.
12,000.
it's about, when you break it out, about 8,000 homes plus or minus. So that are definitely unserved. So we're hitting a lot of institutions, churches, and others as well.
Brian, I've been asked by several citizens about what if their power connection is on the road, but yet they have these long driveways where their power now goes underground. Do you know how that would be addressed?
I think Mike will be the best person to answer
Yeah,
that.
we will follow the utility in. So if they have buried service, we will offer a buried line to their home.
Would that be like a separate?
There will be a small additional fee to do that, just to cover the extra expense. The equipment to do that's fairly expensive. It's more labor intensive too, but it's basically will be to cover costs. It won't be a profit.
So AEP is spending money and asking to try to get this done. And our amount that we're proposing or thinking about matching is 7 million. Is Bland, if Pulaski's matching any?
Yes, they are providing match.
Same amount.
We have a larger project in there, so they're not providing the same amount.
Our total estimated project is 54 million plus or minus, which is a huge project just in one county. And so when you run through all the numbers, the match for the county comes out somewhere between 6 and 7 million, but it depends on how we get everything nailed down. So that's when we were talking yesterday and today, we felt like we needed to come to you with a maximum of 7, hoping that it'll be less than that. But it'll probably be between 6 and 7.
I had a couple questions. So I'm assuming AP's just connecting all these wires to their poles, unless it's underground and then it's running the same conduit or whatever it is underneath the ground.
We're running aerial fiber, so it will be on our poles, on our distribution poles.
So picture on page of the pretty colors in the cable. Is that even remotely real to what is actually gonna be going up there? That's page
The
8.
The picture is a graphic that that Jen grabbed. It's not accurate as to what it's actually going to be.
That's conduit. It's a multi-duct conduit.
I was gonna say,
Service.
and only one of those tubes would be for the wire?
Multi-duct like that, they're all purposed to be for whatever you want to put in there, but mainly
Okay.
fiber. But usually they'll do that to isolate companies. So if you're doing a massive fiber pull down a main highway, I may have the blue one for my company and the yellow may be AEP's, the red may be VDOT's, that type of thing.
So talking about what's going on down in Shawsville, instead of it being wireless, the last, to get it to the house, it's all wired. Is that what I heard?
All going to be fiber to the
All
house.
fiber to the, and all of the stuff in Montgomery County is all fiber to the home.
Fiber to the home, state of the art. We were looking at fixed wireless as when we initially did the grant, but as AEP's worked with us on this project, it just makes sense to go fiber to the home everywhere we.
So help me out with the model. AEP spending $57 million in 3 counties, no expense to us. The only expense to us is the last mile.
Yes, ma'am. That's part of the utility leverage program. So the legislation was passed in 2019 that allows us to come in and build the middle mile and lease our dark fiber to a last mile partner. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We of course will, deploy on all of our poles that make sense that hit. It has to have a dual purpose. So for us, we need to be working on our DA schemes and our access points and things of that nature, and also making sure that Michael can penetrate into the neighborhoods deep enough to serve all of your residents and businesses. So we do have to go before the commission. So this is pending commission approval. We do have to go before them. We'll be filing shortly. Regardless of what the grant awards and different things look like, we'll be filing for that. It takes about 6 months for us to get a final determination. We're doing this in Grayson County. We're about 100 miles deployed now. So we feel like we've got a little bit of experience. We feel good about what we're doing. It's really helping our communities. We're working together. And I will tell you that your leadership, you guys had such a great study that you guys have put together. We reached out immediately to Craig and Brian, who, by the way, probably want to block my number from their phone. But they have been a tremendous help. And you've got a great partner in Michael. He's our partner in Grayson County as well. And this is just a perfect application, I believe. You've got Go Virginia regions, you've got tobacco regions, you've got multiple planning districts. I mean, this truly is a regional project. And I can't forget Angie too. I text her all the time too. they're gonna want to get rid of me. But we've had a great team. We feel really good about where we are, and this would be just a great project for Body to be a part of as well. We think they'll feel the same.
And in our conversations with the folks at DHCD, they have been, and I've shared that with the board previously, they've been very encouraging. I think I made a comment in a previous board meeting. We heard loud and clear from them, go big and go universal. That's what we're doing.
And your questions on fiber, we like to call it future-proof. So really the wireless is very fast and efficient, but it's, you have technology upgrades that have to be made regularly. This is something that, hopefully you really won't have to look out at for decades. So we feel like this would be a huge benefit to your residents.
So people out Mount Tabor have spotty landline service. Is there going to be ways for us to prioritize for people that don't even have landline or cell phone service?
We will talk about construction
service as
schedule.
well.
Hmm?
We will offer phone service as well.
But I mean, it's horrible to get complaints from people that don't even have any cell phone or landline service, let
You mean
alone
how the build goes.
Yeah, like just
So
lay
we'll
it down Mount Tabor, please.
We'll start working on that. Well, there's a whole lot of parts to this, but once we get the application in tomorrow, we'll be working on the filing, and then we'll have pre-engineering, lots of work with Michael and his engineers as well. And we'll come up with segment blocks. And another good part of that is once we start construction and we're deploying our fiber, Michael could come in right behind us and start connecting folks. So you're not going to have to wait 18 to 24 months for final construction. As soon as we're a little ways along, what are we, segment 5 or so
Roughly.
in Grayson, and Michael's set to hook people up. So, that's going to be happening along the way as well. So we'll have to remember that, see where that falls on the segment.
Who's laying all the cables on 460 up by Pandapas Pond?
Facebook, Michael says, Facebook. So, sorry.
It's interesting if you ride around, there's lots of fiber being pulled
I
in the
know.
county. There's somebody coming up Route 8 in Christiansburg where there's already plenty of fiber, but lots of fiber going into the ground.
Citizens is serving Snowville Elementary School.
3 more questions. One, when there are people that can't afford the service at 59, is there, meaning their family income's really low, is there some state subsidy?
There's actually a federal subsidy for that. They just started it in May. You have to qualify by income. Right now, it's up to $50 towards your bill. I think in some of the new legislature, it's going to go to $35, but they're looking to extend it. So there is federal money available for that.
And the state is making affordability a part of their plan for these ARPA funds as well. So I would expect to see a rollout from the state on affordability for citizens as well.
And I don't look at my bill every month, but what kind of taxes actually come back? What revenue comes to the county? Nothing? Okay. All right. And then what happens if they don't meet the December 31, 23 deadline?
Well, again, we have to go through the contracting process with the Virginia Telecommunications Initiative and our partners. This is not something we want to quote unquote put on hold because we might be a little behind. I think we would just extend the date to complete the project.
They're pretty flexible. They've been really flexible. They understand. I mean, there sometimes are supply chain issues. Fiber's a hot item right now. So luckily we've got some really good suppliers and we feel comfortable, but there are always things that might pop up, and the state's been really flexible to work with you on your date. Thank you.
Supervisor Demots.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first would be, you put up the slide with the various levels of service and their cost, and Brian said he has 300 megabits at his home, which is, I feel like that's a lot, but I'm not certain. What kind of service can be expected at 100 megabits per second? Would that be ample for, say, a family of four, just kind of with regular internet use, or what does that mean really?
So at my home, I have Shintel copper cable, and that is like having a water pipe. Everybody pulls from the same water pipe, and your usage and your, I guess, ability to receive varies. And I might be able to pull down 300, but at the same time, I have two children saying they can't do their homework. With 100 by 100 fiber, you have, I mean, it is a dedicated at the speed of light to your house, and that would be more than sufficient than what I currently have.
Okay.
Michael, are there any, Brian was just talking about kids doing homework, streaming and stuff. 100 by 100's pretty
Yeah.
solid.
It's a decent amount of bandwidth, no question. To put in perspective, a Netflix video, if you're watching Netflix, that takes about 5 to 10 meg to watch that one video. Depends on the quality of the video stream, of course. 1080, you're looking at about 7, 8 megs. You can do 4K, it's 20, 25 meg. So that gives you an idea of a video stream. That's your most bandwidth intensive thing to do. The other big benefit to this is it's symmetrical. So your upload speeds are as fast as your download speeds. And in today's world, that's important because everybody's got video conferences and Zooms and all that kind of thing. Most traditional broadband services, even cable, is 300. It's probably 300 by 10 or 30 or
I think 15.
yeah. So it's very limited in upload, and that will hurt you more now than ever. And this you won't have a problem with. The design is based on the most state-of-the-art equipment they make for fiber deployments. It's called XGS PON. We can actually supply up to 10 gigs of speed to a house. So that it future-proofs it. Like I said, nobody today really needs 10 gigs of access at home, but it's there. As things in demand increases, we'll be able to add that with no change to the network. So.
Okay, thank you. Putting it in Netflix terms, I know that sounds silly, but it actually really helped me understand what the speed is relative to the cost. And then my second question, I've noticed in the past maybe couple of weeks, a couple of the Wi-Fi on Wheels carts have showed up in some of the more affordable areas in my district. And somebody mentioned, they're off camera, so I can't tell who they are, but they mentioned that there is a federal subsidy program for broadband. I anticipate I might get some questions about that. Where are the income limits for that found?
I would have to look up exactly where to get that. I have it. I've actually got emails on it because we had to set up to be qualify for it or what have you, so our customers could get it today. The FCC is handling it. I believe that it's like 3 different federal organizations that are doing this. So it gets confusing, but I think they're the main one. I can send the information over, like maybe to Craig or Brian, and share it to you how to do it, because the customer does have to go and pre-qualify. Once you do that, you do it on a federal website. It tells you at that point what providers are active and where you can get the discount. So there's a process that the citizen does have to do to get that funding. It's not very limited though. It's like I said, I can't remember the numbers. I can look it up real quick if you want me to.
No, if you want to just send it on, that's perfectly fine. I just think that would be a good tool to have in my toolkit if a citizen needed that information. So thank you. That would be sufficient. Okay. And that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? I do have a question for AEP. In my district, we have lots of trees. And in a big storm, sometimes they fall down on power lines and take them out. What would happen to fiber if that happens?
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. So we will actually own and operate the asset. That's kind of the beauty of Middle Mile, which keeps this program more efficient and effective. So we will use half of the fibers for our own internal communication. So if we do have outages like that, That's how we communicate with each other so that we know where to go next, what the issues are, and what equipment to bring. So it will be restored as quickly as we can so that we can communicate with one another. We're actually working with training our linemen right now so that they are able to work on both the fiber and our electric lines. Of course, electric service will be first, but they're all together. So if they know how to fix one, it'll get repaired because we need to be able to communicate.
And I'm sure technology has improved greatly since fiber has been introduced. But I've always heard that if you break a fiber line, it's a real bear to get it hooked back up. You know,
It depends on the density of the line. It's time consuming still. I mean, you'll spend 5 to 10 minutes of a strand refusing fiber. Plus you've got to get it down to an area where you can actually do it. So if you've got a massive fiber count that's, 500,000 count fiber, that takes a long time to fix. This isn't like that. We're
Ours
looking
is
at
96.
96 strands, so it's still a process because if it's broke out in the middle of a field somewhere, you've got to get your fiber equipment there. You've got to pull the line down, get it in, splice it back, put it back up, all that kind of thing. But it's not as bad as you think. At least this type of density it isn't. So.
yeah, that was my first concern when I heard that it was going to go on the poles was that, we frequently lose power in various areas, and that's not the same place every time, for sure. But I thought that might be a big issue, but that's good to know. Good to know. Thank you. There's no other questions. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I again just could recognize Amanda and Michael and Brian and Angie. This has been an enormous project. It has been complex. It has been challenging, but I'm very proud of the team we've got. Michael and Amanda have worked very hard. Kevin Bird and Nana Champion at the Regional Commission are helping spearhead everything to pull it together to get it submitted tomorrow. Ron had a full head of hair when we started. We're close to the finish line, and it's as exciting a project as I've ever been involved with. I'm very proud of the group and what's going on.
Well, I would have to say probably for everybody here on this board, that's probably one of the number one questions we get from citizens is when are we going to get some broadband? And especially now that they've heard it on the news and from various folks, they're counting the days. As a matter of fact, Michael, what I hear is, I haven't seen the trucks. Where's the trucks? And of course, I say you've got to have a little bit more patience, but the year hopefully will go by fast so that we can get that connection. So very, very important.
I would ask, just as a consensus, is the board okay with us filing the application tomorrow as presented? You okay, Ms. Thamat?
I'm good, thank you.
That looked unanimous. Thank you.
Will this information be available, like where we have all the broadband information on the website?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I've been referring, citizens to that. The only thing I'd like to add is I'm really excited because this has been going on for years, way long ago. We brought this up, and it didn't go anywhere. And so now something's going to happen. And it's just so exciting. And I, thank everyone for staying with it and getting it done. I can't wait.
You guys have done tremendous planning, really. It's a breath of fresh air when you come into a county and you see unserved areas broken out by neighborhoods and street names. And so it's a credit to your leadership and of course your staff that are working on it. Craig's really modest. There are a lot of folks involved in this project and there are a lot of different opinions, and Craig's been really good at trying to get everybody on the same page. So, yeah. So he deserves a lot of credit for everything coming together as well.
All righty, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is a public hearing for a special use permit, Harris Mountain House LLC Bed and Breakfast.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this proposed SUP.
Period. Business.
It's already.
It's already on the agenda. We have to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
That's the right, okay.
Good evening. We are going to be reviewing the SUP application for a bed and breakfast inn at property that's in the ownership of Paris Mountain House LLC. This property, you can tell by looking at both the vicinity map and the aerial there. Just to the south at the very bottom of the aerial is Plank Drive. So most people are familiar with the Lester's Gate Plank Drive area. And this is very commonly referred to as part of the Han Farm. The applicants are here this evening. And so after I'm done, if you have any questions, there'll be time for them to speak as well. This is currently zoned agricultural, and the site is actually used for the residents of the applicants, as well as this home, which has been restored. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And it's zoned A1. They want to establish the bed and breakfast in the home that has been restored, the older home, and they also live on the parcel. So a bed and breakfast inn is an SUP. We have to do those whenever the structure is not the same structure that the applicant lives in. So if the applicant lives there and wants to do what we call a bed and breakfast homestay, we handle those administratively in the office. But because their house is just a few feet away, this one is treated with an SUP. Just to give you a little bit of background, as I mentioned, this is a historic home on the property. They've done an amazing renovation. We were able to take the planning commission there on site visit to see, and we also have some pictures available if you have any questions about the interior of the home. They were able to determine it dates back to 1779 and then had some additions put on. It's part of the North Fork Historical District and on the National Register of Historic Places. It's on a small parcel, so 1.767, but as I mentioned, it's part of a larger over 600 acre parcel, a group of parcels for the farm there, most of which I think is under a conservation easement, but specifically these parcels surrounding the application are. They already have a little bit of a parking area with some pervious pavers there. They want to utilize the historic house as a whole house rental, so it won't be groups of individuals splitting up the rooms. It would be for all together. And as part of that rental, they could have, whoever rents it could potentially have some small scale events there, maybe a small wedding or reception or graduation type party. We're going to go through a series of pictures here. This first set of pictures shows you both sides of the entrance. The entrance is a little bit of a half circle horseshoe. So it shows you looking both ways on Lester's Gate. And then this gives you a perspective of looking down the driveway. And here you can see where the driveway crosses over the North Fork of the Roanoke River. And then leads up to both the applicant, which you can just barely make out their house there at the end of the driveway, and then brings you right up to where the historic house is. The photo on the left there is the pervious pavers that they have, which is more than enough parking for the use of the site. You could easily fit 7 vehicles there, just we did a really rough count, which is more than enough. And then this is the actual subject house that we're talking about when we are referencing the actual property for the SUP and the inn. This is here in the garden. There's a little, they basically refer to this as a tea house and garden area. Just a nice pavilion with some open seating there. And this shows you a patio and pool area they have at the house. This is the view if you're sort of on the property and looking both towards Plank Drive and then looking north on the property. And this gives you, I think, south and east. So kind of looking at back out towards Lester's Gate. The applicant intends to use existing driveway. We took no issue with that. In addition, there is an improved access to Plank Drive. It has not been improved with its own roadway, driveway area, but it would be subject to this SUP being approved. And that way, just in case the, that North Fork of the river, the area that we showed you, the driveway, in case it ever got up and was impassable, it would clearly be passable via plank. So that gives you a sense of where the applicant is on access and making sure that that's safe. They, as we've already mentioned, created the parking area. It's a whole house rental. And so from a transportation entrance perspective, we got no issue. The site already has 2 high capacity wells and private septic. And these homes on the site already exist. From an environmental standpoint, yes, there's a portion of the property that's located in the floodway. As we showed you the little driveway bridge area. The structure is not located in the floodway, and they performed an elevation study and were able to determine that, and then went through the FEMA Loma map amendment process. So they have made it perfectly clear that their house and pool area, the area that we showed you in some of those pictures, is outside of the FEMA floodway, even though the mapping did appear that it was partially in there before. So they really took those next steps. Should the entrance ever get flooded, as we mentioned, because of the floodway, we have the access on Plank Drive. And we already talked a little bit about the permeable pavers, as well as they've also done some eco-friendly improvements there on the site, including their ground-mounted solar panels. This part of the county is located in resource stewardship. And whenever we're talking about that, we're talking about rural areas that have different unique characteristics based on the type of land that they are. This has been farmed for a very long time and it is still farmed. So it definitely fits in with that. And as I mentioned, there are conservation easements for the property. But also this ties into historic preservation. So this is a way that they are able to have a little bit of an offset from the investment they've made into restoring the historic home. They're able to have this small scale economic driver there, which ties into the entrepreneurial economy part of the comp plan. And it is a continuing preservation of open space there in the county. So when staff did the analysis, as we mentioned, basically the driveway is in good shape and is suitable for the entrances needed. The house already exists. Whenever you have a caretaker that's on the property, you have less concerns as far as when we're coming up with conditions. We don't anticipate that this will add any additional noise, lighting, or much traffic, because again, it's a 3-bedroom home, so fairly limited on occupants. Management's going to be provided by the owners who are there on site. They have enough parking, and this parcel is surrounded by the larger 648 Harris Mountain Farm. So certainly has quite a bit of buffer and room there at the site. So staff recommended approval. There are some conditions that were provided along in your packet for this evening. This is located under your new business tab. There's basically a general site plan, a sketch, and if you were able to take a look at that, you know, it's basically existing conditions. They show where a driveway is, where a house is, where parking is. So pretty straightforward on that site plan. It's for short-term rental only if they're using it as bed and breakfast, so that's up to 30 days, and that's consistent with state code. Any events that are going to be held there would have to be accessory, so it's not as an event venue, but certainly if people are renting it and want to have small-scale events there, they're able to do that. Any type of other event would need to go through the standard process we have here in Montgomery County. Exterior lighting is going to be dark sky friendly. They don't propose much lighting, but do understand the importance of that. And then all permits from other agencies will have to be provided to us prior to our permit being issued. So the commission held their public hearing on August the 18th. We had no members of the public who spoke. We did have some written correspondence that was also provided to you. It was noted that the applicants hosted an open house there at the site on August 9th. And so one of the neighbors who had concerns attended that and followed up with the note that you got saying that all of her concerns were answered. There was a placard posted at the site. The information was available online. And of course, we notified all adjacent property owners. The commission voted 5-0 with 3 members absent and a current vacancy.
to recommend approval of the SUP with those conditions that I went over earlier. The commission, like I said, was able to mostly attend the site visit. And so that really answered any questions that they had about specifics on the site. And so that's all that I have for you. As I mentioned, I'm glad to answer any questions. And if you have any questions, the applicant is here as well.
All right, we'll go around the room. Supervisor Shepherd,
Don't have any questions, thank you.
Supervisor Bowen,
I'm excited about this. I can't wait.
Supervisor Blevins,
No questions.
Supervisor King, Supervisor Demotts,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's going to be such an asset to our county. And it's so exciting, all the history behind it. I'm really glad that you all are doing this.
Thank you. We've done a lot of research on the history. I could bore you for a long time.
It's so exciting. Thank you.
Yes, and I would agree. It looks like a nice project. So.
You have any family and friends?
All right, well, we have nobody sign up to speak for this particular hearing. But if there is anyone here that would like to come forward, you would just need to state your name, address, and you would have 4 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. While you're doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and move forward because I think this is a go-to. But next comes public address. We have nobody who has signed up for a public address, but if there's anybody here that would like to come forward, state your name and address, you would get 4 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to go ahead and close public address. Next is addendum.
No addendum this evening, sir.
No addendum. Next item is our items of consent. Is there a motion?
Some second.
All right.
First time, second.
You can flip a coin on that one. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, if you call the roll.
Mr. Motts,
Aye.
Ms. Bone,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Ms. Biggs.
Aye.
Chairman Chakowski.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right. Next item up is go into work session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, if you call the roll.
Ms. Bone.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Ms. Biggs.
Aye.
Mr. Motts.
Aye.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Mr. Chair, we have Tyler Hall with us this evening. Tyler is our interim emergency services coordinator and full-time deputy coordinator. And then Brandon Weinstead, who's also assisting us during this time. We're going to make a presentation regarding an update on EMS in the county and some of the issues we're looking at. So, Tyler, Brandon, thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you. Like Craig said, we're sort of here this evening to talk to you guys a little bit about EMS in the county, emergency medical services, sort of where we are, a little bit about how we got there, and some recommendations that we have moving forward. So outline of our current fire and EMS departments, which you're all familiar with. We've got 6 EMS agencies in the county, Virginia Tech being sort of that oddball that's funded by the university, but they do provide mutual aid services, running calls into the town of Blacksburg and the county and anywhere else they're needed. The 5 different fire departments as well. All of these organizations are largely volunteer. Christiansburg Rescue being one exception, they have a paid chief, deputy chief, and several part-time paramedics and EMTs that run calls. And then they're the only EMS agency that has any sort of paid staff. Because we have the exception of Blacksburg Rescue having sort of a paid administrative assistant, secretary type position. Talking a little bit about call coverage. So most jurisdictions of comparable size to Montgomery County in the state of Virginia are served by paid fire and EMS staff. We're super fortunate that we've been able to come as far as we have with volunteers who probably provided all those services for us. As the county continues to grow, we're starting to see some challenges, particularly for those EMS volunteers. So kind of outlining some of those challenges, call volume increase has certainly been a big one. So you'll see there from 2015 to 2019, there was a 15.6 increase in call volume. Sort of a strange time period there, 15 to 19. The reason we did that is because 2020, because of COVID, the call volume was actually a lot lower. There were several months where people weren't leaving their houses, going and getting hurt. They weren't getting sick, aside from possibly getting COVID. So the EMS call volume just dropped. And we didn't want that to sort of misinform you, so that's why we used 2019. We've got decrease of availability of volunteers during the day. Back in the 90s, the early 2000s, it was pretty common for people to be able to leave work during the day to go run fire and rescue calls. And now, just sort of the way culture has changed, most people aren't able to do that. We've also had some significant increases in the education requirements for different EMS certifications. Just a general idea for you, most volunteers are going to go to class 8 hours a week to get any certifications that they get. EMT doing that, but sort of the lower level is about 4 months. If someone were to decide to go all the way to paramedic, it's a total of about 3 years going to class 8 hours a week. And then also sort of our last point here is that there have been a lot of new opportunities for volunteers, different places for them to direct their time and their effort. So that's led to a little bit of a decrease as well. Before we go any further, we kind of wanted to outline our goals as we go talk tonight, as we sort of go through this process. The first and foremost, absolutely being ensuring that the residents here in the county get prompt and exemplary pre-hospital care. Following that, we've got providing additional support to the county's fire and EMS volunteers through training and other incentives, and then maintaining transparency and accountability as we go through this process. We have done some things so far to sort of start evaluating where we are and develop some ideas moving forward. Back in March, the board requested this study from the Virginia Fire Services Board. We're going to go through all of these in a little bit more detail as we go. But we also issued an RFP for some daytime EMS coverage in the county, formed a couple of committees that are looking at some different things, and then submitted an initial application for an EMS license for the county. So with the study, as you guys know, we came back in March and said, hey, we would like a resolution from you to request the Virginia Fire Services Board to come do a study of the fire and EMS in the county. There's no cost associated with it. It's been pushed back a few times. We expect that to begin at some point in the next 90 days and expect to have the results from that back by the end of the year. And the recommendations that they give are what we're going to use to develop sort of a strategic plan moving forward with fire and EMS. Just to kind of give you an outline of how that study works. Once they start, we'll have an initial teleconference where we talk with them, sort of get a game plan together. And then these other steps are things that are the same no matter where they go to do these studies. So they're going to come and meet with county administration and then have individual meetings with every fire and EMS chief in the county. One evening, they'll have a town hall meeting. It's open to the public. Anyone can come. They'll go back to Richmond and develop their recommendations and then come back and present those to the board. Talking a little bit about the RFP that we issued. So that was for daytime coverage, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We only got one proposal back, and it was fairly cost prohibitive. And the other issue was the RFP was for a 6-month contract, and the bidder asked for a 12-month term instead. I mentioned these committees earlier. So we've got 2 different committees that we've developed. The first being the Strategic Planning Committee. And what that group is doing is they're sort of following the process of this study. Once we have the results back, that group is going to help us develop that strategic plan, make some decisions, goals as to how we're going to move forward. The Recruitment and Retention Committee is the other one we put together. And that group is sort of evaluating current incentives that are in place, some of these different challenges that we talked about earlier, and how we can help lessen the impact of those on our volunteers. Those committees consist of emergency services folks, county administration, Supervisor Fidjakowski as the representative to the Fire Rescue Commission from the board, and then also representatives from different fire EMS agencies in the county. We mentioned that we'd applied for our county EMS license. So this sort of has a two-stage process. We submitted the initial application. There's no cost associated with that. What that does is allows us to go ahead and start thinking about putting all the pieces together to actually obtain the license, which would incur some cost if the board decides to, this is the direction we'd like to go. That license would allow the county to assist with some EMS staffing and call coverage. This is sort of the staffing model that we're looking at. As of now, would be one fully staffed ambulance, so an ALS provider and a BLS provider. Lots of funny acronyms in the fire and EMS world. So BLS, or basic life support, is primarily non-invasive procedures. So that's going to be things like bandaging, splinting, things that we might think of as first aid, and then just a little bit more beyond that. Then we have advanced life support, or ALS, does all those non-invasive things. Those folks can also do more invasive procedures, things like starting IVs. They can interpret EKGs, perform intubations and surgical airways, and a lot of things like that. So our plan, if you guys give us consensus to move forward, is to work towards one fully staffed ambulance during the day. So that'll be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And then at night and on the weekends, just have a single ALS provider to help supplement the volunteers throughout the county. In general, most all of our volunteer agencies do really good about getting an ambulance on the road at night. It just might not have that ALS provider to provide a higher level of care. So that's sort of the outline for the staffing profile. I know that's a little complicated. Do you guys have any questions about this right off? The estimated costs, total, we're looking at roughly $769,000. Using the model that we just talked about, we're going to incur about $260,000 for staffing costs, 11.5 FTEs. Contracts and services, that's going to be things like oxygen, regulated waste disposal, phone and internet service for the ambulances and things like that. It's going to be about $25,000 in the first year, and then dropping down to $18,000 the year after that. Supplies and equipment, so that's looking at things like the medical supplies, obviously. Excuse me, some communications equipment, things of that nature. Initial startup year one, looking at $49,000, and year two, after we've sort of bought that, there's some of those initial items, well, that would be reduced dramatically down to $17,500. Building and maintenance, so that's some things that we would need to do in order to get a building ready. Things like making storage space for supplies and equipment. That also includes costs for cleaning supplies and things of that nature, water and power bill, things like that. And then the last item on their fleet, you see the first year, $431,217. The bulk of that would go towards the purchase of an ambulance, and then obviously we're not going to have a new one of those every year, so that's why you have such a dramatic decrease. Totals of $769,329 and then $320,587 in year two. As we go through this, again, we're going to constantly keep in mind that one of our goals is to continue supporting our volunteers any way that we can. So this will kind of help us increase the availability and convenience of training for the volunteers. We talked about how that was one of those challenges. It's hard for them to find training sometimes. When they do, it's really time consuming. Also, we utilize career staff to handle some of the more routine operational tasks around the stations, minor maintenance and repairs and things like that, just upkeep. And then lastly, we have the recruitment and retention committee evaluating some other possible means that we could use to support our volunteers. So sort of the next steps, the things that we'd like to ask you guys to consider and discuss. First being general consensus to move forward with what we're calling phase one, which is what we've outlined here tonight, that first group of staff that we talked about. And the idea is we'll initiate phase one pending the results of this study, and then use those study results to make a plan moving forward. The purpose of phase one is to go ahead and plug some holes in places that we know we have needs until we can get these results. Once we got the general consensus and you guys are able to, or if you guys are willing to appropriate the funding, we'll come back in January and hopefully review the results from the Fire Services Board study. And then by February, we should be able to fully obtain the license, make all the purchases necessary for that, have staff, and start running calls. And then moving forward from there, we're going to evaluate how phase one is going. Do we think it's effective? It's covering our needs, and then develop a second phase based on the study results. That's all we have here.
Randy, Mr. Tyler, appreciate, we have two chiefs with us tonight. Drew Smith are here from Christiansburg and Blacksburg. We're keeping the Fire and Rescue Commission very much in the loop on this. It's something that the volunteer base on the rescue side that has been a challenge for a while.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much discussed why we have to start moving forward here, because we're just not getting enough volunteers to cover the whole county. And the whole purpose of us having fire and rescue is to take care of our citizens. So it's one of the basic obligations I think the county has. And so we want to keep it going, and we want to keep this expanding. Yeah, we're starting out with one ambulance, but we hope as we move forward and after we see what the fire program people say, move on from there. So again, it's trying to help our volunteers. We value our volunteers. We don't want to lose any volunteers. So we're trying to find that balance that we can help them out during the day when they're working for the most part. And that's the whole idea. So discuss.
Ready for questions?
Yeah, they are ready for questions.
Number one is county owned ambulances. Why did we need to buy a new one?
So one of the largest reasons for that. Come back up.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest reasons for that is by law, the largest text on the ambulance has to be the name of the agency. And so if we're establishing this new agency, the new agency's name would have to be that text.
All right, you're saying one ambulance, where's it gonna be housed in?
I think the current thought is the Shawsville-Elliston area for this first one.
Is that the only place you're gonna put paid people?
For phase one.
They're going to be where the ambulance is.
That's what I'm saying.
If you want to run calls countywide,
They can, yes.
Oh, why wouldn't you put them in?
in a general.
Because the middle doesn't have an issue like the outside edges do.
Well, that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
I mean, either down there or out Roanoke direction,
Or McCoy,
or Long Shot.
or down Catawba Valley.
Well, you have Shawsville, you have Reiner, and you have Long Shot McCoy. Long Shot McCoy has the least amount of calls. Shawsville has more calls than Reiner. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it would make sense that you would put it where it would be most needed. And again, it's not a situation of it's going to go there and that's the end of it. No, we're hoping to expand this whole thing and increase it so that we've got coverage all the way around. So that's why that end of the county.
It just seems to me that Reiner's even more centralized located for the rest of the county. Just saying.
According to the call, in, I guess it was this week's, last week's county reports, the call volume is, the problem is Shawsville. That's more calls than McCoy and Reiner, correct?
That's correct. Just historically, Shawsville runs more calls than Reiner.
And currently, does Christiansburg cover for Elliston right now?
Just so during the day, depending on what part of the Shawsville Elston area you're in, if Shawsville's unable to cover a call, then you're going to get the next closest agency. Most of, for the largest part of that area, it becomes Christiansburg. But then there are certain parts down North Fork Road towards Den Hill, where it might be Blacksburg instead.
Right now, whenever we don't have, if we don't have coverage out in the county, Christiansburg and Blacksburg they're the ones that have to step up and go out there and respond to those calls. So we've always been crisscrossing anyways. It's a constant thing. So Christiansburg comes down to Shawsville, takes a call. Christiansburg gets a call. If they don't have ambulance available, then Reiner might send them an ambulance, or Blacksburg might send an ambulance. So there's always going to be crisscrossing. That's always going to be there. But hopefully one day it won't have to be as much. But in reality, there'll always be some amount of travel. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
That's okay. I just wanted to, when you're looking at your staffing on page 13, you're estimating 11 and a half full-time employees.
Yes, so the plan is to use for the actual call running personnel, those would all be part-time. So it would be 6 BLS providers and 14 ALS. And then we also included one sort of supervisory position in there and half of a sort of finance and administrative position in case that was needed.
That's why I was trying to figure out how we got that number with that now. And the purpose of the EMS license will be so that we can create this new agency
Yes.
for the county. And then eventually, what does that mean as the county expands and we have more needs?
So part of the process of obtaining that license would be, we would have to at some point have a resolution from you guys that recognizes the agency sets its geographic boundaries as far as where it operates. So that's as simple as saying when that resolution is drafted, that they operate within Montgomery County. And then so from that point, there's no limit to where they can go.
So 431,000 for the fleet. Is that just one ambulance?
Yes.
Just one. How many is in Charlottesville now?
How many?
I believe three.
Three
There was
ambulances there now. And this is going to cover from 6 to 6.
Yes, and so when
That's the.
there are three vehicles in Shawsville, they're not necessarily staffed all the time, just like anywhere else. So Christiansburg, for example, has 7 ambulances.
So where I'm going with this is, why couldn't we use one of the ambulances that's already down there? If they're going to run calls 6 to 6. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying, because I asked the same thing, but these gentlemen.
So look, largely like a lot of that goes back to those regulatory requirements where the markings on the vehicle have to reflect that the largest text has to be the name of the agency. So we can temporarily, until we were able to purchase an ambulance, we'd be able to use one that has Shawsville Rescue or Reiner Rescue on the side.
Can't permanently change the letter.
That's an option. We don't want to totally take away the identity from these volunteer agencies. So we want to make sure that we're leaving them sort of their own trucks as well.
To make sure I'm,
If you're covering 6 to 6, that's half the time. I mean, and you've got 3 ambulances already. So you still have 2 marked with Shawsville. You know, I'm going with this. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, so could we have a Montgomery County, you know, overall with smaller letters Shawsville, smaller letters Reiner, smaller, and that would be okay?
I think that's where he's going, that is where it says volunteer, is that correct?
No, literally just the name of the agency is the regulatory issue.
So you would literally take an ambulance away from Shawsville and give it to the
If
county.
you're gonna station it down there, you wouldn't be taking it away.
I know, but in the big scheme of things, I'm kind of like you when I first thought of it. Well, we're all Montgomery County, but technically not. Technically, we have 11 different organizations is
Right,
what it is.
Understand that.
But by having a county license, we could do everything in the county. I'm
And we
not
could
explaining
use-
that very
And
well.
we could.
But we
use-
already are.
And you could still use the present, you don't have to buy, you don't have to buy any new ambulances. If all county was under one county,
So yes, so right now, each rescue squad has their own agency license. Look, we're not trying to take away their license. So our goal would be just to have this extra agency that's supplementing what they're already doing. That answers your question?
and it's costing us $400,000 to do that.
It's costing us money.
Yes.
I have a question to weigh in and kind of add to what people are saying. I hear what Supervisor Shepherd is saying. Aren't the ambulances already owned by Montgomery County? And then at the same time, you know, an ambulance is half a penny of the real estate tax rate, which is a big chunk. When we're already looking at, you know, these other additional expenses. And I really do wonder, do we have an ambulance availability shortage that necessitates the purchase of an additional ambulance, or can we re-letter an ambulance that already belongs to Montgomery County and think of it as a good first step?
Didn't we buy ambulances with the CARES money?
We did, and those were assigned to a couple of the volunteer agencies. They're lettered. They're assigned to the volunteer agencies.
Well,
I think where Tyler and Brandon have run into concern is we have gone through this entire process. We don't want anything that we're looking into to be perceived as trying to take away from the volunteer agencies. And yes, the county does own and has purchased ambulances that are in several of the agencies. But to go in and take one back and say, well, we're gonna take that ambulance and
See, I can't look at it that way because I can see us going down the road 20 years from now and it all being paid.
yes, sir.
We have no volunteers, so you're really not taking away, you're adding, I feel like. I mean, I think that's a service that we're adding because we can't get volunteers.
We discussed, yes, sir.
Well,
This is not-
the way I feel about this is the county is growing, it's gonna continue to grow. And one of the things that people look at and we're responsible for is response time when an emergency happens. It's very critical. We're responsible for public safety. And so I get that. I think that, you know, I think taxpayers too, if you explain what, you know, the situation was, would understand as far as cost goes. But can we use any of the American Rescue Funds to buy an additional ambulance? So we're stuck.
Not this round, no.
When would be the next time we would buy an ambulance?
Well, thank you for mentioning that point. We have an
We have an
equipment,
expert here.
yeah, we have an equipment committee that's part of the Fire and Rescue Commission. And we have various agencies each year that request funding for various apparatus. When an ambulance comes up for its next purchase in one of the agencies, and yes, we can do exactly that. We can say, instead of this one being replaced in whichever agency is due to be replaced, we're gonna buy that one and it's gonna be assigned to the county. We can do that, and that does it. The only takeaway then is that whichever agency may be up next to upgrade an ambulance just doesn't get their ambulance there.
Do we have an ambulance shortage currently?
No, we have a personnel shortage.
So to your statement a while ago about taking away from rescue squads, I'll divert to you guys. You might have a better answer. So would you imagine that if it all got approved and you had the money and you're gonna hire whatever it was, 11 people or whatever, would you think part of those would come from that rescue squad? The volunteers?
I think we would definitely absolutely see some volunteers, some people that volunteer with the county be interested in these positions.
Yeah, I don't know. I know we're gonna have to do it. I think the least amount of pain we can put on ourselves as far as monetarily, the better off we'll be in the long run, and it costs to start off.
Are we short an ambulance in Shawsville, or are we just short people? How many ambulances should Shawsville have at this moment in time, if you had the people?
Vehicle wise or staffing? Staffing.
Vehicles, based on the staffing needs.
I would say 3 is probably reasonable. Because if they have 2 calls go out at one time, you've got 2 of the 3 on the road. If one of those 2 were to be broken down, that gives you.
And are any of the other fire rescue short, or are they all sized properly? We don't have any excess ambulances.
Everybody seems to be where they need to be as far as vehicles. And when we replace ambulances, we surplus the old ones. We don't stockpile equipment.
That's a good point that Brandon brought up. You got to have some redundancy built into it because they do break down. They go in the shop, they may stay in the shop for a couple of weeks, so. To have more is way better than to have less and get caught. So.
What we really wanted to do tonight is to start making sure to make sure the board is aware of the process of the thinking that is being discussed right now, because it is a challenge. It's a major change from the way we've operated in Montgomery County for a number of years. And I think I've shared this with a number of you before. When I go to conferences or talk to other county administrators around the state, they're amazed that in a county of 100,000 people, we're still at the level of volunteerism. And I always say, well, that just speaks to the people we have in Montgomery County. We're very blessed with the volunteer base and whatnot, which is why we've been really sensitive about anybody feeling like we're taking stuff away from them. But at the same time, we've got to look at that big picture too, and I understand that completely. Maybe a way to approach it, as was mentioned, is when we do the vehicle replacement committee every year, the next one that comes up, we just say that one's done.
When Neil was emergency coordinator, me and him had the same discussion. Basically, the same thing is here, except for new ambulance. And I've talked to down Christiansburg mayor, Blackburn mayor, we had lunch one day, we talked about it. And I've talked this to Steve. Before this goes any further, about putting paid people in somebody's building, this board needs to meet with each department. Number one is, that's their house. Don't come down here and say you're gonna put somebody in here. Now give them their words. That's their house. They spend their time there. Their families been without them while they run calls and stuff, especially rescue, stay overnight. The
Does that
members,
answer your question?
the members need to have a voice.
I will say excuse me, while we were having these conversations, we talked with excuse me, Chief Palmer from Shawsville Rescue, and with Chief Hodges from the Austin Fire. And Chief Hodges was very, very open to the idea of the ambulance being down there. I don't know if he's had a chance to run it by his members, but
that's what I'm saying. All due respect,
Absolutely.
The chief runs the firehouse, the captains run the rescue squad, but the members run the calls. They need to be involved in this.
In what way would the members be involved in it? Just voting on it?
At least we could reach out to them.
Or we're doing that through the fire commission?
That's not the same.
It'd be nice if they would be on board. I get
That
it.
is correct.
Well, we definitely want to keep our volunteers. So if that is an issue, then that's something that we should do.
I think that's would become a serious issue. I can see how that would be.
I know it would.
I agree.
I mean, how would you feel if I come to your house and just come right in there?
You're welcome to come to my house. I have 2 spare bedrooms.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I take this personal. I'm sorry, I do.
We're not putting one in Reiner Fire.
People run the calls, they, especially, like I said, rescue stays overnight. And for us to go down there and say, this person's full-time here, that's just wrong.
I hear you, and I think that's worthwhile addressing. I really do. But in this phase that we're going into now, we're looking at putting this 1 ambulance in Elliston. And the chief is okay with it.
The chief,
The ambulance hasn't been bought.
the chief is okay. with it.
Nothing has been done. We are taking baby steps through this thing. And yeah, we talked to the chief.
Yep. The members.
Noted. Yeah.
Maybe it would be, we should do is, when this fire study comes back, for instance, and it has recommendations in it, maybe would that be a time that, to Todd's point, about trying to have conversation with the folks so they understand exactly where everyone's coming from as far as the need and the public safety aspect for our citizens and the response time and that kind of thing? I mean, is that what you make some really valid points here, Todd. That,
I mean, there's
because your boots on the ground.
there's local people that I know that went through the same thing and half the volunteers left because they got no say in it. I just think it's wrong to put somebody in there.
When the fire study is done, Craig, do they talk to the volunteers at all?
They will talk to the board, but then the board could decide how they want to disseminate that all to the.
Oh, really?
to the groups.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, let me back up. The folks that are doing the study will talk to the leadership in each of the departments.
They also have the town hall as well that anyone's
Yeah.
welcome to come to.
Is there going to be more than one town hall or just the one?
They typically just do one.
Let me make sure I understand. What, isn't the chief or the captain of each of these departments, aren't they the representative for? So maybe we should just, if they have not already, that if the chiefs and captains have shared this with each of their departments and their volunteers, and so they would have a meeting, and then the chiefs or captains as their representative would let us know, just like we represent our citizens, they would represent their volunteers to let us know how they feel. And of course, town meeting, so everybody, all the volunteers can have a say in that. Going back to this ambulance, my concern about purchasing ambulance, and I understand that you have to have a separate agency, but I have a concern with over $400,000 for an ambulance when we have ambulances that are not being used because we don't have volunteers to man them. So that, I get that, but it sounds crazy that I've got ambulances that we could use, but they're not in service because I don't have anybody for them. So I'll go buy another ambulance that I'm gonna pay someone to use. That doesn't sound like good use of money to me. That wouldn't happen in my household. Somebody would be sharing for the benefit of their sister agency where the needs would be, and not trying to take anybody's fire truck or ambulance away from them. But,
Just to clarify, I don't think I did a very good job of explaining it. So that $431,000 that's listed there, 325 of that's for the ambulance. The rest was for maintenance, fuel, and things like that.
Would it be possible for the ambulance to be the oldest third ambulance down in Shaza?
Guess anything is possible, but I don't
Is
know
there-
why you would do that.
I mean, so
I don't know what
that the
advantage-
volunteers get the best vehicles and then the paid.
I don't think any of their ambulances are junk on wheels. I think they're all pretty nice.
And this crew's probably will be running most of the calls.
6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Yeah.
Well, that's the reason we had this in a work session tonight, because I knew we would get some feedback and comment on how we need to be progressive, because we want to ensure that we're moving slow and that we're getting concerned addressed, like Supervisor King brought up as well.
So Craig, I have a question, and that was a perfect segue to it. I don't understand, and I need some clarity on it. It feels like we are jumping ahead of the study process by considering this proposal now. So I'm not really sure I understand why we're not waiting for the results of the study before thinking about a proposal.
And Supervisor DeMonts, I think that's what my question was sort of about, like, about the fire study and what they might.
Yeah, you were definitely kind of getting at it as well. So if we could get some clarity on that, why are we having this study but considering something in advance of getting the results? And it's not that I have any objection to paid staff or anything like that. I just kind of am thinking about the process.
One of the concerns has been responsiveness in a couple of areas of the county during daylight calls, the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. time frame. So we had taken a look at what it would take to supplement those calls. And one of the things that we talked about with the Fire and Rescue Commission was looking at a contract for paid services through a third-party provider. We actually put that out for a bid, got one bid back. It was quite expensive and had a lot of caveats in the bid that internally we just said that's not even really an option that we should try to consider. And then the question came up, well, what could we do as a county to starting to help supplement these calls during this time frame? That's what led to the discussion of trying to get our own license as the county, and trying to look at some way to bring in paid staff that could help supplement calls during that time frame. All we've done so far is just ask questions and study. We've not hired anybody, we've not bought anything, and we don't intend to do that until we are sure that the board is fully behind whatever direction we're trying to go. So again, that was the reason for the work session tonight, just to let you know where we are and what we're thinking.
Is that something that the study will give us though? It's like these, should we buy an ambulance? Those sort of things. Or is it going to be more?
I think it's going to be broader in terms of identifying. I have no doubt that when they do the study, they're going to come back and say you have a real challenge with calls from that 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. timeframe, not only in one or two areas. There's some days that, they'll have a call in Shawsville and Christiansburg runs to that call. Then there's a call in Christiansburg that Roanoke has to run cover. And there's been days that I've seen Blacksburg ambulances going in front of this building to cover calls. Mm-hmm. It's a real challenge during the day. I know that we're all so respectful of the volunteer system, and we want to make sure we continue to honor and respect that. The concern is we've got to make sure that we have covered, Brandon or Tyler once said that our primary responsibility is taking care of our citizens. And if we're missing the boat on that, during the day, we've got to figure out how to address
And I would think that, going back to placing an ambulance like at Shawsville, and someone I think brought up, well, that wouldn't be the end of it. I think that part of the process would be some kind of strategic plan that you would lay out and you would say, okay, we're gonna start here. But we also know that we're gonna have these needs and we would have a plan for how we would implement funding for those needs. I mean, you don't just,
it. And it's gonna be a long-term plan.
yeah, I
It's
mean, it has to be,
the communities I've talked with that where we are now in these discussions, 20, 30 years ago
mhm.
are still, I mean, it's a gradual process because I agree exactly with what Supervisor King said. If you come in and say, okay, we're gonna hire 30 people and here they go, then your volunteers are out the door at that point. And that is absolutely not what we want to do here.
No.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we need to think about going forward is to not so much sell this, but try to get the volunteers we have on board with the fact that this is us starting down the road with paid personnel. That's all we're doing. There's nothing else behind it.
And it's also a support for them, because we don't have enough people to answer the call, so there has to be some kind of backup.
Well, we certainly have made it clear, not to every member of every squad or every fire department, but we have certainly made it clear to the commission, who has representatives from every fire and rescue. And I would think that they would be talking about this and how it's going to be phased in, because it is going to be phased in. There is not going to be any moving into somebody's house and replacing stuff. And we thought that would be a good fit, put an ambulance in Elliston Fire. They have the room for it. They have the space. Chief like to see it. And he's okay. He's on board with it. So whether he's, relayed this to his members, I do not know. But I'm going to find out. And we're not affecting what's already established there at Shawsville. So it seems like a good fit to start phasing this in and seeing how it's going to work. There are other advantages for the county to be licensed. Instead of having 11 licenses out there, there's an advantage to having the county license.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with insurance companies. So that this is also something that could benefit us. We looked into doing it without the county license, and we found out it can't be done. Not on the rescue side. So
you're talking about county license, so the rest of the department's gonna do away with their license?
no, I don't know how that works out, Todd. I really
I
don't.
was gonna say, because it's gonna need an OMB for the county license.
We know that.
So on a given month, how often is everybody crisscrossing paths?
Daily,
Every day.
Really?
multiple times every day.
So it's obviously needed.
So Steve, as our representative, can you go back and ask if this is being talked about?
Yes.
Can we find out? It's one thing, like, I guess Todd was saying, like, for the chief, but like to find out if all of the different rescue and fire, are they all talking about it, or do they know? Because, like, if you're talking about down there, Reiner's gonna be talking about it, because everybody talks back and forth, so.
Yeah.
It'd be sort of, and then that's how you get people upset, when they don't all have the same information at the same time.
Yeah, I'm certainly gonna call Chief Hodge, talk to him tomorrow, just to see
we have
where
fire
he
and
stands.
rescue Thursday night too.
And then we have a commission meeting, so we can ask the chiefs there if they've discussed it.
I think just, we're leaders of this county. I think it's our place to talk to them. I will reach out to each one of them. I would do that myself.
I want to thank Tyler, and Brandon's been helping us with this too, is these guys are young and energetic, and if you tell them we got a problem that needs fixing, boy, they're gonna figure out what we gotta do, but it's like, and I know Angie about 10 times today says, slow down, slow down, slow down.
There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, for
There's a
sure.
whole lot of pieces, and if you put one in the wrong place, it's gonna create a challenge. So it's a slow and steady. But again, the whole purpose of tonight was just, and we certainly have, is just to let folks know kind of the path that we've been thinking about and trying to look into, and your comments are very well appreciated.
Well, the bottom line is it's for the citizens and it's also for the volunteers. It's bottom line.
Yeah.
We have to make sure everybody is
Yes.
covered and to make sure, and it would be just, and even though it would be stationed in Shawsville as a start, because that's where the need, it would be able to assist anywhere, correct? It would go anywhere.
That would be very important to make sure people understood.
And then again, I guess we'd also need to talk about possible incentives and to get our volunteer numbers up and how we can help the volunteers, because we love our volunteers. They take great pride and dedication and commitment to serve our citizens. And so maybe we need to have those discussions if we're not having, a uniform, everybody's on the same page. That way everybody can be transparent to know what's going on and what we can do to help our volunteers. This is something that they take great pride in, and we are very grateful. And we are also very blessed to be in a population of close to 100,000. I think the census is wrong, but I'll say 100,000.
It is.
It is wrong that we are at 100,000 or more, that we've been very blessed to go this long with volunteers. And that is a great testament to our county and our citizens and the pride and dedication they have to serve each other. So this will just be a supplement and a way to start addressing those needs, because heaven forbid, we're not able to serve a citizen and we don't have a call to be answered. And that's where we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that it's covered. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, the recruiting and retention of volunteers is pretty important. That's why we've got a committee looking at it, and trying to get some consensus from everyone on what would be meaningful benefits or meaningful things that the county can do or provide for them to make it easier for them to be volunteers. And Vice Chair Biggs and myself have been on liaison calls with the school board. They're looking into it. I've sent the superintendent information that I believe Brandon or Tyler, one of you provided for me, about how to get it started. And it turns out that the Department of Education and the emergency services already have an agreement on teaching EMT in high schools. Of course, it seems like every time we take 2 steps forward, we got to take 1 step back. And then I found out, well, you got to be 18. That was the last thing I heard. So, I don't know how many 18-year-olds we have in high school, but it's a good opportunity for a senior to learn a skill that they could actually get a job immediately after graduating from high school, maybe right here in Montgomery County. And it's a great opportunity for them. So they're looking into it. I don't know how far it's going to go, but they're looking into that. We also had Virginia Tech. They even said their medical school, their folks have to get a certain number of hours in, I don't know if you can call it volunteering, but certain amount of hours of hands-on type training. And again, volunteering at the rescue squads helps them. So.
Medical school.
Yeah.
Direct patient care.
Yeah.
But this is going to be, from what I can see, this is going to be a long process, but it's not going to stop at rescue squads either. We need to help out the fire departments too that are struggling and have options for them too. So this is going to continue to grow, but we want to retain our volunteers and mix in with the paid. And sometimes that could be difficult. Craig and I have talked to a couple of county administrators that have gone through this process, and they seem to be doing okay with it, even though they've got mixed group. They have some that have paid, some that don't. And it just depends on, again, the response to the citizens. If we're not able to cover it, then we need to kind of boost whatever department that is so that they do have the resources to answer calls.
So are you saying that that by having our own department, the $400,000 in ongoing costs may actually be covered substantially, just because we might be able to soft bill or whatever
There is
that
no
is?
might, you can.
You can,
And
to the
yeah.
extent of how much of that cost?
not the whole thing.
About a half or a quarter, or, so we're
That's-
not talking about a half a penny, clear, you know, we're not at that eventually, right?
Christiansburg is already there. They're already doing that because under their license, they can.
But that was a whole discussion a few years ago about people not everyone wanting to do that. Like Blacksburg and Christiansburg, I don't know if that's still the case, or not Christiansburg,
Yeah.
but Blacksburg and the rest of the county not wanting to.
Blacksburg's
What did they
having,
do?
they're having more thoughts about that too.
We've discussed that as a board before.
Yeah.
But that's not something we're jumping into right now. We're baby stepping into this thing. And we'll get there.
Figure out how to do that eventually.
Yeah, any
It'll
way
help
that,
out.
yeah, any way that we can cut our costs would be
Revenue
benefit.
recovery is absolutely.
And are we looking at how the town of Christiansburg and the town of Blacksburg, because they do have paid staff along with their volunteers, how that has worked?
Didn't you send that to everybody on the board? That what Christiansburg's doing?
No, sir, I think I just did that
Just to me?
For special.
I'll send it to y'all.
So we
So you
know
look
how
at
the town of Christiansburg and town of Blacksburg, since they do have paid staff and volunteers, we have kind of a model to look at to see how well that works and use those as a resource to say these are the
That's
advantages
down
and
the road.
disadvantages.
Down the road. Yeah, that, I don't know.
That's the leadership versus this isn't, I mean, they're
Yeah,
leaders in the community, but they're the worker bees too.
Has the committee on retention and recruitment actually talked to other localities that have ideas about what to do with volunteers to help?
that's a good question.
But
Yes.
There's been a lot of input from
Yeah.
Good.
what other
Because
localities.
I know other localities, that I've, meet at Virginia Association of Counties, talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of the members on that committee have done that very thing. They've contacted others. So it's a collaboration. I'll send that all to you. Everybody find it. But it pretty much kind of summarizes how Christiansburg did that. Because when you start talking about soft billing, people get excited. They get upset. They think, well, if I don't have insurance, I'm not going to get help. And that is not true.
Right.
It's not true. But Christiansburg did a very good way. They did a very nice public presentation. And when we get to that point, we can do the same thing. Educate the public on what it means. So we're not doing it now, and that's probably at least a year and a half, 2 years out.
Long road, yes.
Yeah. April, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
What do you think?
Way to put me on the spot. No, I think we've had an interesting discussion. I do have one just kind of question that could be answered. When are we expecting the study results? I don't know if that was said in the initial slide and I just missed it because I wasn't thinking about it, but do we have a date that we're expecting that?
We were hoping by the end of the calendar year. Department of Fire Programs is a little bit behind in terms of getting some others finished. So it'll end of this year, early 2022. So
So 60 to 90 days-ish.
It'll be here before you know it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. That's the only other question I had, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other discussion?
Thank you for the time on this issue this evening.
All right, we need a motion to come out of work session.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bowden?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Now we're back in regular session. Next item up is new business. First up, special use permit, Paris Fountain House LLC Bed and Breakfast.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, if you're called.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bowden?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item is the resolution of support for the 2022 VATI broadband grant application.
So moved.
Second.
We all want to be first on that. Can we all be first?
We'll just hyphenate this. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All I want to say is, wow, I know we've talked about it. Governments have talked about it, state, federal, everybody's talking about it, but I think it's going to be moving forward. So
And to have wires to everybody's house, that's just off the
I
chart.
meant to tell them it's
Awesome.
only 20 feet from the pole to my house. So they're going to save a lot of money on my place. Madam Secretary, if you call a roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, next item is a proclamation, the recognition of first responders.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just like to say thank you to, again, all of our first responders that serve. And of course, we just talked about that rescue and fire, but a true testament to their commitment for the county. And I think we have 444 volunteers or close to that.
529.
529, excellent. So thank you to all of our first responders.
Yes, and I will second that. And
You can't second.
I'm just seconding her comment.
Oh.
All right, I just say ditto. But yeah, our volunteers do so much that we never even see, when if you have a problem and they come to your house, yeah, you see them in action, but you don't see all the things that go on behind the scenes, all the work on their equipment, especially their training, which is another topic that comes up with retention and recruitment is the training, because that's something that all 11 departments handle a little bit differently. So that's another thing we'd like to bring kind of under one idea, but
And like Supervisor King said, the time away from their families.
yes. All right, no more discussion. Madam Secretary.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next up is the proclamation for National Suicide Prevention Week.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get a second?
Yeah.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just said it's important. It is important and very important, especially during these times.
Yes, and no, that's the issue that you all know that I've recently had to deal with, and it's not something that you think about normally, but if it happens, then you always say, what could I have done, or what should I have done? So it's definitely something everybody should be thinking about, and if you see a problem, you need to get somebody some help for sure.
It has long-lasting effects on all those that are left behind.
Certainly does. No more discussion now, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Bowden?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we were done with that. Moving on to reports. First up, County attorney.
Yay.
I thought for sure this time you did. All right, next up, county administrator.
Well, in the midst of working on grant applications and all the other things we've been working on it here, we did interview several candidates for the tourism director position last Friday. Very excited about hopefully wrapping that up in the next week or so. Also, viewing the applications we have for the assistant county administrator position. I've had a number of good applications for that, and hopefully to be able to start moving that process forward in the next week or so. Thank you to those. I mean, everybody's responded, but we have a couple of call meetings coming up, and I appreciate your willingness to spend some time on several issues. We have our joint meeting with the Planning Commission next Monday night at 6 o'clock. I believe that, did we get the location confirmed today?
It's Cross Point.
Cross Point Conference Center. We've worked on that today and got that set up. We have a couple of meetings in October, joint meeting with the school board, and also a meeting to spend some focused time on county finances, just where we are for the end of the fiscal year. Talk about some further discussion on American Rescue Plan funding. You allocated or agreed to let us use some of that tonight going forward. We appreciate that, but there's some other challenges that we want to talk to you about as well. So I'm gonna be busy going into the fall. But thank you for your support. That's all I have.
All right, I will go down this convenient list of board members, starting with Supervisor Bone.
No report. Just want to make an announcement. In-person early voting starts this Friday, September 17th from 8:30 to 5 p.m. at the registrar's office in Christiansburg Government Center. And then it moves to multipurpose 1 in early October. And then the Blacksburg Community Center opens October 18th, 8:30 to 4:30. And runs through October 30th. So about a week and a half of early voting in Blacksburg, which is great. That's all I have.
Supervisor King.
I have much report, but I do want to tell everybody I appreciate them coming out to the Roanoke Fire Department open house on that Saturday. We had a good crowd, and I appreciate everybody that participated in. And Dave Parker was talking about that tornado that come through. I want you to think about something. There's over 500 volunteers. That evening, and almost every department in this county was on their third and fourth call. Just about every department. So volunteers do come through.
Oh, yeah.
And I do want to tell all volunteers, not only fire and rescue, but any volunteer you do here in the county, I appreciate it. Any volunteer. Thank you.
Supervisor Blevins.
No reports, but just to echo along with Supervisor King that again, so grateful and for our volunteers, and wanted to do a thank you to RSVP of Montgomery and Radford for their Patriot Day of service for September 11th. They were able to give all of our first responders and law enforcement goodie bags, homemade goodies, and they collected throughout the month. And so they've done an excellent job for that to as day of service to recognize our law enforcement and first responders. And then again, shout out to Town of Christiansburg for their Rockin' on Main Street concert they had for our first responders. It was great for, again, our hometown heroes just being recognized all over. I couldn't be more proud to serve Montgomery County. That's all.
Supervisor DeMonts.
No report, thank you.
No biscuits for breakfast?
Not this week.
Supervisor Shepherd.
No report, but I'll reiterate what everybody said about the fire and rescue and all the appreciation that they deserve, along with our police, sheriff's department. That's all.
Vice Chair Biggs.
Same here with fire rescue and law enforcement. Don't know what we do without them. The only other thing I have to report is that the airport, the Virginia Tech Montgomery Executive Airport made about $4,800 on the parking for the last football game. We didn't have as many big planes come in as we did the weekend before, but we had smaller planes, and yes, they bought fuel, yay. Because that all goes into our budget, so things are running well at the airport right now, so good. That's it.
Very good. I met with the Eastmont Community Foundation last week, and they provided me with a summary of what they've accomplished just this year in their mid-year report. Gave out 6 $1,000 scholarships to Eastern Montgomery High School seniors. They gave out 2 $1,000 grants to local nonprofits. They, of course, they had their first concert in May down at the Old Town Fields, was a pretty good success. The June concert was rained out, so they kind of lost money on that one. But the July 3rd Independence Day celebration was the largest crowd they've had. And of course, they had a concert and fireworks that night. And then the 4th and final concert on August 13th was attended by about 350 people, which is lower than what they bring in, but they had some storms come in right when it was starting. So everybody had to kind of go back to their cars and hide until the rain stopped, and then they all came out. But they're still operating the Eastmont Thrift Store Wednesday through Saturday. The Waldron Fitness Center, their membership remains steady, and they have classes and a child watch for people that are exercising. Picked up 2 new pieces of equipment, so they're accomplishing quite a bit. The link letter, which I don't know, many of you probably not seen.
I get
Have
it.
you? Okay, good.
Does everybody get it?
They continue to publish that 6 times a week. I mean, 6 times a year. That would be a lot. That'd be a subscription, wouldn't it? We had the Tomato Festival, got my T-shirt, so I'll be ready for next year. Casino night's coming up this Saturday. It's a big fundraiser. Tickets are $50 a piece, but I guarantee if you go, you will have more than that in fun, because it is a lot of fun. And then, of course, the Meadowbrook Center, they have the community room there that they provide for people that want to have events there too. So they've also replaced 2 heat pumps in I think probably the rental rooms. I think so. Yeah, so they're doing a good job. Really appreciate them and all they do for the community down there. Be nice to see other organizations pop up in other places of the county, because they're a great model, and I'm sure they would be glad to help anybody else get started. But they are in a unique position, and it's worked out very well. Other than that, I think that's about all I have to report. So without any other further comments,